dangerous. Oh, why, if it isn't little Ayanakaji? What a coincidence. Kalenji called my name. There was no way he was actually calling me, right? The instant the bellhop noticed that Kalenji's attention had shifted over to me, he appeared elated. I'm finally free. Is what his look seemed to say. No. How could a crew member act like that? He ought to continue serving the customer, no matter how annoying the customer was. It was like someone releasing their pet into the river without permission, especially if that fish was a ferocious, invasive species like Kalenji, which would devour all the native fish in the river until there was nothing left. Do you want something from me? I asked. No, I've no real business with you. I've simply acknowledged you because we are schoolmates. Also, though we are certainly not alike in terms of position, you are my roommate. Kalenji flipped his hair once again, scattering more water, which splashed my face in uniform. Of course, he didn't seem to have the faintest clue what he was doing to his victims, despite what was happening to me. The bellhop watched this tragedy unfold with a grin. Oh yes, I sympathize with the pain you're feeling. Not, he seemed to say, well, I will excuse myself. Please do take care in the future. The bellhop delivered that parting shot as he made his escape, having fulfilled the bare minimum for his role. Of course, I didn't exactly want to end up alone with Kalenji, either. What were you talking with Kalenji about? I asked. For an instant, the bellhop's expression changed to a look of anger, but when Kalenji turned around, the young man's smile returned. He was like a German or something. Well, as you can see, he was wet. I tried to offer him a towel, and so, in other words, you were giving him a warning. I must have interrupted you. So I'll be on my way and let you get down to business. I passed the ball, if you will, a blazing fastball that crushed the bellhop and gave me a chance to escape. This bellhop came to give me a warning? Kalenji cried. No. Well, that is to say, I managed to escape from Kalenji and headed back toward my room. But I'll just bump into Kalenji again there. Won't I? I murmured. My room would become less of a sanctuary and more of a hell. I've been alone with Kalenji several times during our trip, and every experience was unbelievably uncomfortable. Wanting to avoid such an awkward atmosphere, I turned around. I wouldn't return to my room just yet. I'd head back to where Hirata and Yukimura, my other roommates, would be. A map of the ship was on a nearby signboard, and pretty easy to understand. The fact that the map had been placed in a gilded frame might have been overkill, but also made it seem like something you'd find on a luxury liner. I drew a route that'd let me kill a bunch of free time, and immediately hopped onto the elevator. I got off on the second deck. The ship had 9 decks in total, plus a roof. The 5th deck was above ground, while the 4th deck was below. The first deck housed both the lounge and banquet area, while the rooftop had the pool, cafe, and other facilities. The 3rd and 4th decks were for guest rooms. The guys were on the 3rd deck, the girls on the 4th. The guys and girls, teachers included, were neatly divided. However, there weren't any special restrictions on our movements, so a guy could easily wander through the girls' area. We were probably prohibited from staying on the girls' level or coming into the area after midnight, though. The ship also had various kinds of entertainment options, such as movies and a live theater venue. These were everywhere, from the 1st underground level up to the 3rd underground level. On the 4th underground level, the lowest level at the bottom of the ship was some kind of switchboard breaker room. That particular level was irrelevant to the students. The lounge was open 24 hours a day. We were free to go there no matter how late it was, but a notice from the school urged us to refrain from going there as much as possible. As I walked through the 2nd level area, I noticed that the atmosphere felt quite different. The rooms were vacant, and I couldn't tell what they were used for. So few students were in the hallways that it appeared deserted. Just then, my cell phone vibrated in my pocket. Pulling it out, I saw that I'd received an email. A certain girl was calling me. It was convenient, since I'd planned on killing time anyway. With no reason to reject her, I took the call with pleasure. 2.2 Sakura, who'd sent me the email, was making several anxious, pained sighs. What's the matter? I asked. What? Ayanakaji-kan. I didn't think I'd spoken in an especially harsh or shocking way. But Sakura was so surprised that she looked like she'd been jolted with electricity. Her normally hunched posture straightened at once. Sorry for scaring you. And no. I'm just kind of strangely nervous is all. If she was that nervous about meeting a friend, her daily life must be a drag. Ayanakaji-kan, you're roommates with Hirata-kan, Kalenji-kan, and Yukimura-kan, right? My roommates? Yeah, you're right. What about them? I wasn't expecting her to ask that. Oh, well, to tell you the truth, I'm a little worried about the people I'm sharing a room with. It sounded like she didn't really have a good relationship with her roommates. Sakura wasn't good at socializing, anyway. One look at her deeply troubled expression, and I understood. You're worried because even though you want to get along with them, you don't think you can. I'm not sure. I have mixed feelings. I do want to get along with them, but I also want to be alone, too. I'm just hopeless, aren't I? Her voice trailed off and she shied away. I didn't know who else was sharing Sakura's room, so I couldn't really offer any advice. By the way, who are you rooming with? San. Oh, didn't I tell you? Shinahara-san, Ichibashi-san, and Mizano. She looked incredibly depressed while giving me the names. Those were all girls with strong personalities. Shinahara had a close relationship with Karuzawa. Karuzawa was like her boss. Really, she was a reliable, trustworthy girl who didn't run away from a challenge, even quarreling with the boys. But she could be rather relentless against people she didn't like. I couldn't imagine she thought much of Sakura, so she probably wouldn't go out of her way to befriend her. Ichibashi was usually rather mature, but also headstrong. I didn't really know much about Mizano, but I had a bad impression of her. She had a bad attitude and seemed quick to pick a fight. She was probably the hardest type of person for Sakura to deal with. Even if Sakura tried her hardest to bridge the gap between them, if Mizano didn't like Sakura's attitude, she'd probably hate her. I wanted to pat Sakura on the head and tell her how great she was. I mean, she hadn't cried until now. She was doing great. But why come to me? I asked. I just thought any advice from you, Anakaoji-kan, would be good, Sakura muttered quietly. Apparently she'd come to unexpectedly rely on me. She murmured some words of apology. I'm sorry to just come to you for help like this out of the blue. You're so busy, Anakaoji-kan. It's no big deal. I don't mind it when you come to me for advice. Whether I'll be of much help is another story. Since I wasn't really friends with any of Sakura's roommates, I couldn't guarantee I'd be able to help. While I was thinking of something I could do, a door opened. Huh? Anakaoji-kun and Sakura-san? What are you doing here? Kushida Kikaya from Class D exited the room. Sakura's bright expression immediately disappeared. Like the sun hiding behind the clouds, the atmosphere around us became uncomfortable. Perhaps Sakura wasn't good at controlling her emotions, either. Sakura's response to Kushida's bright and cheery appearance was one of rejection, but Kushida continued talking without showing any signs that she noticed. Did I interrupt? I didn't mean to. I was supposed to meet up with some friends. I'm going back to my room. Sakura retreated as fast as her legs would carry her, as if trying to withdraw from Kushida in a panic. Oh, I'm sorry. I guess that was bad timing. I probably shouldn't have said anything. Kushida clasped her hands together in apology. There wasn't really any reason for her to apologize, though. Sakura was just bad at dealing with people. Oh, that reminds me, I feel like this is the first time we've talked since getting back to the ship. I did see you hanging out with a bunch of girls earlier, from a distance. Kushida was the most popular person in Class D, probably in the whole school. On the day of the school entrance ceremony, she'd declared that she would make friends with everyone, and had almost accomplished that goal now. She was only missing a select few, like Sakura-san. I've made plans to go see some girls from Class C today. Do you want to come? Anakaoji-kan, is it okay for me to join? Huh? You'll come. This was shaping up to be a bad day. Kushida's mask had slipped a little, and her true self seemed puzzled by my response. Well, there was always the diplomatic, socially acceptable way of putting things. In other words, I had to find a polite, diplomatic way to refuse. I'm joking. Don't you know by now that I'm not the sort of person who joins in on stuff? Oh geez, come on. You surprised me a little. Anakaoji-kan. You're funny, really? Deep down, I doubted she truly found me funny, but I was scared to hear Kushida's real thoughts. Well, I'll be going, as she bid me goodbye. Both our cell phones started ringing at the same time. There was a loud, dinging sound that meant we'd received a message from the school. Usually it was a message with new instructions to follow, or some kind of modification to an event. Your phone would make a sound even if you had it on silent. Clearly, it was a message of high importance. What is it? Kushida asked. She stopped in her tracks and looked puzzled, which was understandable, even though they'd explained this system to us after school started. We hadn't received any important messages during our summer vacation until now. Simultaneously, an announcement could be heard throughout the ship. Attention! This is an announcement to all students. All students should have received a message from the school, as indicated in the contact line. Please check your individual mobile devices and follow the instructions accordingly. In the event that you did not receive a message, we apologize for the inconvenience. Please go to the nearest faculty member for assistance. Because the contents of the message are extremely important, please do not miss it. We repeat, that was about the message we just got, right? Kushida asked. Probably. I pulled out my phone and saw the following message: a special test will begin soon. Please gather in the designated room at the designated time. Anyone who arrives later than 10 minutes after start time may be penalized. Please gather in room 204 on the second deck by 1800 today, because it takes about 20 minutes to reach the area. We ask that you please use the restrooms now if necessary. Either silence your phone or turn it off, and make your way over. A special test? This probably wasn't going to be a paper test or physical fitness examination, or something you'd see at a regular school, much like the survival test on the island. However, nothing in the message implied what awaited us. Were we supposed to be able to read into something, or should we just be prepared for anything? I didn't know. More than anything else, certain points in the message weighed on me. They wanted us to gather in the room at 1800, but we only had about 20 minutes to get ready and head over, which was an extremely short amount of time. Plus, it seemed like it had been decided rather quickly. Also, why was the designated meeting spot one of the ship's private rooms? That couldn't make a good exam room by any standard. Can you show me your phone for a second? I asked. Kushida, without hesitation, showed me that she'd received the same message. The only difference was the designated time and place. In her message, the designated time was set at 2040, but she was also told that it took about 20 minutes to reach the area. I also noticed that her designated room was just 2 rooms down from mine. I wonder why they called us in such a strange way. I have no idea. I only knew that I had a bad feeling about this. I hadn't thought that our cruise would end like this. A place where all the first-year students would gather inside the ship. I'd already visited places like movie theaters, party venues, and buffets. I thought I could speculate about the contents of the test based on any suspicious activity I saw, but I'd seen no indication of anything of the sort. Why would they isolate students, limit us, and then tell us to start? Whatever this test was, I quickly messaged Harikita via chat on my phone. I saw that she had read the message immediately after I sent it, which was unusual. She'd often wait about half a day before reading and replying, several days in some cases. Was it because we'd received a message from the school around the same time? I tried asking her questions. Did you get a message from the school just now? I typed. Yeah, I did. My designated meeting time is 1800. What about yours? Mine says 2040. That seems like a pretty big difference. 2040, huh? The same time as Kushida. So were they going to separate the guys and girls? That was all I could guess at present. They did tell me that the start time for the test was at 1800. After all, I'm curious about the difference in start times. That might be unfair. Some people will get more time to prepare than others. We can't know anything for sure at this point. We chatted more about the school's message. Harukida's replies were instant. There are several things that I'm still curious about, but we don't really have the time. We'll just have to show up to the meeting spot. Because your time is earlier, I look forward to hearing your report. Understood. After I sent that short reply, she stopped responding. She had apparently shut her phone off already. Ayanakaji-kan, Kushida, as if interested in my chat with Harukida, drew nearer to me. I considered talking to Kushida about my conversation with Harukida, but didn't want to be a bother to her. I decided to wait and see how things progressed. It shouldn't be long, anyway too. 3. I walked to the second deck, just as the message had instructed. I arrived at my destination about 5 minutes before the designated time. There were several students wandering the normally deserted level. I saw some people I couldn't identify enter a nearby room. It was more than 1 or 2 people. They came up to the designated deck and disappeared into the other rooms. Are those students from another class? I wondered. At first, I thought about waiting in front of the entrance. But things might have already gotten started inside. More than anything else, I didn't want other students to see me, so I decided to act. A reply came immediately after I knocked. Enter. I stepped into the room. The homeroom teacher for Class A, Mashima-sensei, wearing a well-tailored suit, sat before me in a chair. My eyes lowered to a small table on which some materials waited. 2 male students sat before Mashima-sensei as well. Both were my classmates from Class D, so one of the remaining 2 spots belongs to Ayanakaji Dano. I see. Most agreeable. It was Satamura who uttered that strange, nerdy greeting. People affectionately referred to him as the professor, an overweight first-year high school student with glasses. He fit the stereotypical image of a male otaku perfectly. He was very knowledgeable about history and machinery, though much of his speech, his actual words, and his inflection all came off as unintelligible. Despite that, he was somehow able to communicate with others. This is rather odd, isn't it? Ayanakaji, Yukimura. Another of my roommates on the ship sat next to the professor. The professor and Yukimura. Normally, you wouldn't find the 2 of them together. I wondered why they were here. What had we gotten ourselves into? What are you doing? Hurry and take a seat. Mashima-sensei spoke without looking at me. I silently took a seat next to Yukimura. One vacant seat beside me piqued my interest. At first glance, I guessed that we had been put into groups of 1 teacher and 4 students, but why such small groups? Maybe the as of yet unseen 4th student would shed light on the situation. We are still waiting on 1 more. Please sit quietly. I got the feeling that this definitely wasn't a trivial matter. There was a storm coming, the curtain rising on a new test. A powerful omen. No matter what we might have expected, it was obvious that this test would be something entirely different. Ordinarily, it would be normal for everyone to receive the test's rules at the same time to ensure fairness. Whether it was a written exam at our desks or survival on an uninhabited island, that was the norm. But here we were, in a private, enclosed space. Why did they want us in small groups? I was worrying too much and too early? No matter how much I agonized over it, I probably wouldn't find any answers by myself. I sat down in the chair. None of us spoke. Although we hadn't yet passed the appointed time. I really wanted the mystery person to hurry up and get here. There was a clock in the shape of a music box, a common feature in every room on this ship. Silence hung heavy all around us. Before long, it would be 1800. Mashima-sensei glanced at the clock only once. Come as you like. Simultaneously, someone knocked at the door. Mashima-sensei told that person to enter, and the door slowly opened. Pardon the intrusion. With that, Karuzawa entered the room. I'd expected our 4th person would be from Class D, but I hadn't expected Karuzawa. I'd thought another guy would be joining us. This was completely unexpected. Huh? What's going on? Why are Yukimura-kun and these other guys here? She asked. My thoughts exactly. I couldn't hide my bewilderment over being included in this bizarre gathering. The professor didn't seem to worry, but Yukimura looked puzzled. I believe you were told punctuality was key. And yet you're late. Hurry and take your seat, Mashima-sensei said. Okay. Karuzawa's response indicated that she wasn't thrilled to be here and didn't much care what the teacher thought. She sat down and, after studying the 3 of us, lifted the chair and moved it a little further away from me. I felt somewhat depressed that she wanted to get away from me, Satamura, Yukimura, Ayanakaji, and Karuzawa, from Class D. Without further ado, I will now explain the special test. Good, at least we were getting an explanation after all. However, the reasoning behind selecting this group of 4 was still a mystery. We were in a private room, too. I had a bad feeling about this. Wait a minute. I don't understand. What do you mean? Explain a test? The test was already over, right? Also, what's the deal with these guys? This is really weird. Karuzawa, unable to listen to anyone else talk, immediately barraged Mashima-sensei with questions. I wondered if she'd even read the message properly. I will not answer any questions at this time. Be quiet and listen. Sure enough. Mashima-sensei looked coldly at Karuzawa. Geez, alright. Fine, I'll shut up. Mashima-sensei had a reputation of being rather cold to his students. Even now, he seemed aloof during a simple explanation. My own homeroom teacher, Chibashira-sensei, was also indifferent, cold, and didn't provide any support to her students. Like her, Mashima-sensei didn't seem like the kind of teacher who would provide a shoulder for Class A students to cry on. The only definite difference between the teachers was that in comparison to Chibashira-sensei, who seemed unmotivated and unnaturally uncooperative, Mashima-sensei was impossible to read. I wondered if he kept everyone at a certain fixed distance, no matter who they were. In this special test, all the first-year students will be divided into 12 groups based on the signs of the zodiac. Everyone will participate within their respective group. The purpose of this examination is to test your thinking. 12 groups based on the signs of the zodiac. That meant Class D was divided into 3 groups. And those 3 groups would represent 3 of the 12 signs. Apparently this would test our thinking. They wanted to test our ability to think, and to process information thoroughly. Was that it? What do you mean by test our thinking? Karuzawa, unable to stay silent, reflexively spoke up with another question. I've already told you. I will not be answering any questions. After Mashima-sensei's second warning, Karuzawa seemed to feel the gravity of our situation. Although she looked blatantly unhappy, she shut her mouth and listened. I didn't know how seriously Yukimura and the professor took all this, but they remained silent. Society needs 3 fundamental qualities in order to progress: action, thinking, and teamwork. Those with the necessary qualities will become wonderful adults. The previous exam on the uninhabited island focused heavily on testing your teamwork. However, we shall now test your thinking in 4 ways: your ability to thoroughly process information, which is an essential component of this test; your ability to analyze your current situation and clarify the task at hand; the ability to solve the problem after you've clarified the process and identified the task; the ability to utilize your imagination, and the ability to create new values. Those are the qualities you'll need, although his explanation was rather concise. Several question marks were still hanging over everyone's heads after his brief explanation. I was no better. I still didn't understand anything at all, as I've said. In this test we have divided you all into 12 groups. Finally, the words that Karuzawa had longed to hear arrived. Are there any questions thus far? I don't get what any of this means. Can you explain it in a way that's easier to understand? I mean, okay, I understand that we're being divided into 12 groups, but why am I together with these guys? What about Hirata-kun? Or the other girls? And I still don't get what we're doing. Tell me. Come on please. Even though she attempted politeness at the end, I get the feeling she didn't mean it. However, Karuzawa was right to have doubts. Even though Mashima-sensei said that he was taking questions, the explanation was ambiguous at best. We still didn't know what commonality there was between the people gathered here. If each class was divided into 3 groups, there should have been 12 to 15 Class D people gathered here for the explanation, but they hadn't done that. Was it due to the size constraint of the rooms? No. This ship had several rooms that could host a modest-sized gathering. There had to be a reason they'd purposefully subdivided us. You 4 gathered here will be in the same group. At this very moment, students in other rooms are receiving the same explanation you are. Wait, so we were members of the same group? In other words, the 4 of us were allies. If that's true, then wouldn't it be way faster and easier if you just gathered all of our classmates together in one place and explained? Also, what's the reason for putting me with these 3? Why? These guys gross me out. Why am I on a team together with boys? Honestly, I hate it. Though being with Hirata-kun would be fine. Karuzawa continued blabbing until Yukimura finally seemed to lose patience. How about you shut up and try listening? The test is probably going to start soon. If they dock our points because you keep blabbing, are you gonna take responsibility? Even back on the deserted island, you dragged us all down. Can you try not to cause any more problems? Huh? When and how exactly did I cause problems? You're pissing me off. I'd seen guys and girls quarreling with each other many times in the previous test. The professor and I stayed quiet. Calm down. You too. Yukimura, your concerns are groundless. The test hasn't yet begun, so you won't be affected. Besides, your attitude has no bearing on this test. See? Now you get it, right? Karuzawa looked smugly at Yukimura. Yukimura glared in frustration. I should have stayed quiet, but I had to say something. Karuzawa, if you don't change your attitude toward the teachers, it might leave a mark on your permanent record. That wouldn't be good, right? HMPH. Yukimura snorted derisively, mocking Karuzawa without saying a word. Mashima-sensei seemed to develop a headache while watching a fight that would be more appropriate between elementary school students. He lightly tapped his finger to his forehead. Listen. Your group assignments are a done deal. You cannot change them. To gain a good result on the test, you must get along. Ugh, geez. This sucks. I can't deal with these 3. Hirata-kun would have been so much better, heh. But you know, 3 heads are better than 1. Thus, if the 3 of us join together, we might be able to surpass the good Hirata-dano, my dear lady. The professor said. Gross. Even if there were 100 or 200 of you, you still wouldn't be worth a single hair on Hirata-kun's head. I tried not to care. But hearing her say that kind of thing depressed me.